Going to continue talking about segmentation using GuideMia OrthoPlus software. In the last session, we start tooth segmentation and let the system automatically perform segmentation of the lower jaw and the upper jaw. That's basically a second stage of our segmentation that refines the results from AI segmentation. Now, we are going to take a further look into what we actually need to do after the initial segmentation. Now let's go back to the software. This is where we are. We finished both the lower jaw segmentation and upper jaw segmentation. If we follow this workflow, the system actually will perform all the necessary operations for us. But since we're going to step by step explain what's happening, let's go one step back to the upper jaw scan, and we will see how we are going to deal with the model processing. Again, all those tools are context based, so context sensitive. It knows where we are and what we can do. If we click this button, we basically go back to the upper jaw scan. If we want to show anything, we can do right click and show other model. So what's happening here is we have the initial scan, and we perform the segmentation. We have those artifacts. That's because of the model is triangulated model. If I want to see how the triangulation looks like, let's take a quick look. So if we take, for example, this tooth as an example, we middle button select that. We can use this button to zoom in. So this is our crown boundary. It's from the original triangulated mesh. If I click this button, we can see how the mesh looks like. That's a reality. We got the scan from the scanner. So let's see how are we going to deal with this. There's a single mouse button here. This finish all processing. It will do everything for you, including boundary smoothing, interproximal areal fixing, and root generation, and interproximal analysis, and remove the gap and collisions. Every single step in here can be all done by this. So let's click on this button, so what we got, and then we do step by step for the lower jaw. While the system is working on this, let me repeat what we can do here again. We can do smooth the boundary, fix interproximal areal, calculate the gaps and collisions between the teeth, and fixing the gaps and collisions. Now let's take a look at here. Let me click this button to maximize this window. And this is the model we have. Now we can see all the boundary has been fixed nicely, smoothly, and the interproximal areal has been fixed. And look at those numbers, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, meaning we have 0 gaps between the teeth. If we right click on this arch model, or we can click this gingival button, we can hide it. Now you can see we create something like a Pondex virtual roots. We have other options to create anatomical roots. Then if we click this, it's going to generate anatomical roots. Let's look at those numbers for the moment. When we receive initial scans, the interproximal areal can be a gap or can be no gap, but we cannot tell by simply looking at the STL files. Sometimes people look at intraoral pictures they can identify, okay, that's really a gap, or it's really uh, just scanning artifacts. So need to correct that. Let's say you have a 0.2 millimeters gap, but if you don't treat that as a gap, then to the tooth setup you are going to have problems, because at that position, when initially it has a gap, you didn't realize that. So what we are going to dealing with is the accuracy of tooth segmentation and the virtual roots. You want them to really reflect the reality, so that we have accurate models and have accurate tooth setup. If we go one step back to initially look at the scan and create the models, we can see what we have. Now let's go to the lower jaw to see this issues we might have. Now we are at the lower jaw step here. Again, we have all those artifacts from the original scan. If we first click this smooth all boundary function, it's going to fix all the boundaries for us. Now you see all the crown boundaries are smoothed. Now if we click this button, it's going to fix all the interproximal areas for us. If you watch those areas, they are going to be fixed. Now we fix the interproximal area. Now how about tooth orientations? Let's leave it for the moment. Now we create virtual roots. In this step, we're going to create anatomical virtual roots. Let's hide the gingival model. That's how they look like. Now, because of the tooth orientations are not quite recognized yet, we haven't adjusted anything yet, there could naturally be problems with all the interproximal areas. For example, there is obviously a collision here, and there could be unnecessary collision or gaps throughout the arch. So that typically will happen with all the software systems if you perform initial tooth segmentation. Now let's take a look at the tooth orientation first before we further make the adjustment. If we click this button, or if we click this one, it will redo everything for us. But we want to take a look at the individual tools. So we haven't talked about this button. Now it's the time. If you click this one, it takes us to a full workflow panel. You have everything you need in the workflow, in the entire process. Comes with many tools and toolboxes. Why we didn't show this? Because majority of the time you want the workflow to be streamlined with this one, and you want to have additional tools when necessary, but when time comes you want to access advanced features, then here you can always do. Let's take a post-processing here. You see this fix all from the jaw button is fixing everything. And there's one button here we never talk about. That's optimize tooth orientations. If you look at those are simply the orientations according to the arch curve. We want to fix them. If you simply click this button, the system will try to identify all the correct tooth axes and adjust the tooth orientations. Now you see the changes. And in the meantime, system is actually updating the root models according to those orientations. Now they look a lot better. If in any situation you want to make adjustment, you can always right click the arrows, so you can see we show a control box or bounding box of the crown. You can rotate this, so to adjust the crown orientation and to adjust the roots. So this is a very important aspect of this post-processing. Again, crown boundaries, interproximal area, orientation, roots. Now, if I close that one, it goes back to my toolbar here. Now, let's say what we have. I will end up with between the interproximal areas. Let's do analysis. All those numbers tells us when we extract the crown boundaries, we make roots based on those partial information. The roots can get bigger or can smaller or smaller than reality. Then you end up with collisions, because in every single model scan or intraoral scan, you never get a full crown model, and a lot of the lower part of the crown, interproximal area of the crowns, are a guess. So what we want to do is we want to make the best guess. So we're going to fix those areas by click this single button. Now we modify all the shapes and we adjust the gaps and collisions between the crowns. Sometimes there are situations we may need to have do a second try to adjust that. Now we fix all the collisions and gaps between the teeth. So that's all you need to do for post-processing, but that's very important. You do it so that you have accurate results for tooth setup. Now let's go back to the upper jaw. By the way, for actual tooth segmentation setup, you don't want to mix the virtual roots with anatomical shape and non-anatomical shape like this. So the ideal situations we fix them by generating anatomical roots. Then I have this anatomical roots button turned on. I use this button. Again, this is your good friend. It fixes all the post-processing for you. Now we have a solid base for further to set up. You can watch closer what's happening. Crown boundaries, interproximal, tooth orientation, collisions and gaps, and as well as virtual roots. Now we have all those done in a single step. As you can tell, the system is highly automatic. So we have been doing step by step get to this point. But we can also very well to start the aligner bot at the very beginning to automatically finish everything with just a few mouse clicks. In the next session, we're going to talk about tooth setup. I'll see you next time.